So, we're here for yet another Mandalorian discussion show, and as people who are watching the video may be able to see, above me and around me I've got new bookshelves and things with stuff, and above me I've got Mandalorian stuff. The camera's not that HD, unfortunately, so I am going to try and improve the camera quality because it's just the default one in the laptop, but you get the gist, High Republic stuff all around me and things. But I'm here talking about Mandalorian with none other than Angry Andy. Good sir, how are you doing? How have you been finding... No, how are you doing? And then, have you been excited for Mandalorian? And we'll kind of go off from there.
I am doing okay. Mandalorian. Now, I wasn't excited. I was excited, to be quite honest. But then I just remembered, that I didn't really enjoy the way everything happened in the Book of Boba Fett, with the resolution to Grogu going off with Luke Skywalker happening so quickly and him coming back. Spoilers, you should really have watched all of it by now.
Yes.
But yeah, so I had a bit mixed feelings, to be quite honest. I was sort of thinking, well, are they going to address it in any more detail? You know, his quick departure. Are they going to how are they going to do it? I was left with quite a lot of questions following the Book of Boba Fett, and then with sort of Andor being as bloody brilliant as it was, I was left with even more questions. You know, in terms of Christ, the quality is just on a different level. Yeah, so it's just really mixed feelings, to be quite honest. I mean, I really, really enjoyed the first season of Mandalorian. Second season was up and down for me. And then looking back at last week, it was a bit of a mixed bag for me, the premiere episode. It was a bit choppy, a bit all over the place, a bit of, look at these characters that were in the last two seasons from 2 years ago. Hope you haven't forgot about them. Look at these places that we've been to before. Got to make sure you all remember them. But here we are with this episode, and thankfully, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with you there in certain respects. I think it is the better of the two episodes. I did enjoy the last episode. I didn't think it was phenomenal, but I did think it was in the upper half of Mandalorian episodes because there are... I enjoyed Series 1. I didn't think it was amazing, but I enjoyed it. I think Series 2 was better, but it did have a couple of weaker elements, but the stronger elements I think were far stronger, I think, for the most part than Season 1. But then, as you say, Book of Boba Fett was certainly weaker in places, couldn't really decide what I wanted to do, and then the Mando stuff, and it was actually amazing, so it's like, what? But I agree. When I was speaking with Brett last week, he said Andor's kind of spoiled us in a way, because it's so good that now it's like, we always just thought, they're going to be like Kenobi and Boba Fett and Mando, which are fun but flawed, entertainment with some cool lore and some cool action scenes, but not quite the dark and mature, subtle Star Wars and espionage, and the darker side is what everyone's kind of clamoring for from Legends. We want these more mature stories that don't hold your hand and point out cameos all the time. We want that. And then they were like, okay, here's Andor, and everyone was like, I'm sorry, you've this is amazing. This is beyond anything. And now we're like, yeah, Mando is cool. You know, it's a good, fun show. I love Mando, and I'm glad it's here for what it is. And there are some killer moments in it, you know. But with Andor, I was like, after season 2, because it's only apparently going to be 2 seasons. After that, I'm just going to be like, there's got to be something they put in its place. I'm hoping they learn, and things like Ahsoka, I want to be that, but I don't think it will be. But I'm hoping other shows they can kind of explore and do things with, and be like, let's go into that thing, because I don't want it to be right, there's Andor series 1 and 2, we'll make one random little spin-off show and that's all you get for this mature content and nothing else for ages. It's like, no, I want them to mesh it in. I want, if Mandalorian was made in the way that Andor would be, it would be considered arguably one of the best shows ever. Andor's already almost considered that. In some, so I wouldn't say it's in the best shows ever made ever, but in Star Wars it's definitely up there. And then if you thought of a really amazing film series of that year, it was definitely one to be considered. So it was when it's that good, that out of the yard, it kind of spoils it for Mando, because we're like, you've done it. Now just use elements.
It does. And I remember talking to you about Andor. And I will hold my hands up and say, at the time, I did not care. I was like, I'm not really bothered about it. I'm not bothered about it at all. I watched it purely on the basis that of how much I enjoyed Rogue One. Rogue One is still the best Disney film for me.
Mm-hmm.
By far. I'm a war movie junkie as it is anyway, and obviously, like yourself, a massive Star Wars junkie. So
Mm-hmm.
both of those elements meshed perfectly together for me. And with this show, I think what struck me with Andor, what struck me was the absolute quality in the writing, the quality in the performances, the depths of all the subtle innuendos and backstabbing and planning and scheming. I didn't expect it. It caught me off guard completely. And you're right, it's kind of spoiled. The perception of the Mandalorian, really, because it was the first show, it was the first introduction to Star Wars TV, other than the animated stuff, of course, but live action TV. So we were sort of like, on tenterhooks for that entire first season. Oh, what's coming next? What's going next? Oh, he's done this. It's very gunslingery. I love it. The Westerns. And again, I love Westerns. Not as much as war movies, but I love Westerns. So there were like tasty elements there. But I think for me, what did sort of undermine Mando in season 2 was the level of nostalgia. And like you said, we don't get any of that in Andor. It plays it straight. It just goes straight for the bull's horns, and it gets straight into people are going to die. Plain and simply. So, but yeah, it's weird. It's almost like a different genre, isn't it? Mandalorian. It's playing it more light and more fun. This almost campy mythological Western, which is Star Wars anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know. I don't know where it's going. I think that's the thing with the Mandalorian at the minute. I'm not entirely sure and convinced where it's going. I've got a wild prediction for the end of the series, but I don't think it might actually be that wild considering what we've seen in the last 2 episodes. But we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely will. And also Ben said he can be joining and things, so that's all good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Sorry for that pause there. But yeah, it's with Mandalorian, it's everything you said is correct. It's its own sort of genre, and it's one of those, because as you say, previously with Book of Boba Fett, it kind of didn't know what it wanted. But I think they are doing a season 2, and I'm like, okay, I'll still watch it, but it's like I kind of need it to find its footing, and we'll concede. Clone Wars Series 1 is not the best. Rebel Series 1, I love it, but it's not the strongest. It's just pretty good. Resistance Series 1 is pretty awful, and not to offend any of the creators involved with that. I know it's mainly for sort of a younger audience, but I was not a fan of that really. But Series 2 did pick it up a bit more. But like Series 1s are, with shows, you get one of two ways. You either get the first season is often the best and it gets worse, or you get it often when it's more of a franchisey thing. It's normally once it starts to get going, or sitcoms are a lot like that. Like the first seasons of a lot of American sitcoms, for example, the first season's rarely the best. It takes a few seasons to get its footing. So I think of like the lines like that. I think Mandalorian is kind of finding itself. I think it was trying to hook people a little bit after, the sequels kind of got critical negative reviews and things, and understandably a lot of criticism towards the sequels and the Rise of Skywalker. So when I think season 2 came about, I'm not trying to undermine the storytelling element, but like with Ahsoka, who obviously we love and Dave Filoni created, and Luke and things like that, it was like, this is a grab for people who've kind of gone away from Star Wars a little bit. And it's like Mandalorian for a lot of people, Book of Boba Fett people weren't often a fan of, Obi-Wan Kenobi people often weren't a fan of. And so it's like, there are obviously a lot of fans that do enjoy those properties, and I'm one of those, but it is becoming the mainstream people who kind of dip in like, oh, I'll give the show a watch. They watch one Star Wars show and get, like a lot of them watched Book of Boba Fett, stopped at episode 3, didn't get to the amazing stuff with Mando, and then they've started Mando, and I've had people on my Facebook I'm acquainted with who've said that thing and commented those things to me as well, and saying, I don't really understand what's going on. I've said about I'm trying to look into that. But it's certain shows are making it weaker. It's like people dip their toes in, but not enough people dipping their toes into Andor, because it's like the most unlikely show that any non-Star Wars fan's going to watch. But it's the show that is probably the best for people who aren't even that into Star Wars. Yeah, that's the crux. That's the paradox.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like a weird. It's proper double-edged. lightsaber blade, isn't it? Like, it is the best show, and yet it's the one that people will go, I don't really get. I had to convince one of my friends to, because he was of the same thing. He's like, oh, is it just going to be all this, cameos and this? And I was like, no, if you've watched, all you need to really watch A New Hope, Rogue One, and you can go straight into it, and it'll all make sense, and it tells its own story, and that's what I think. That's why I think these Star Wars shows need to do is they need to be telling their own story, like fundamentally telling their own story, and I hope we get. And Ahsoka's probably going to be some form of Rebel spin-off, isn't it? Some like belated sequel, if you like, and which is fine, but again, it's not going to be massively accessible to, like you say, people coming in on the random, like my missus, for example, who was, started watching The Mandalorian purely because of Baby Yoda. Mm-hmm. She had no sort of connections to anything else, and with season 2, she was doing the same thing. She was like, who's he? Who's that? Why is she there? Who's this person? Oh, is that Ahsoka? Why has she got white lightsabers? It's like, they dropped a sort of a ball on it. In my opinion, I think there could have been ways and means of doing it without having to force in so many people. I mean, even today, she was like, oh, is that's that Bo-Katan person? Who is she again? And it was like, Christ almighty.
Fortunately, that's one thing where myself and Megan, we split a lot of the TV shows, and Star Wars gets priority. So it's like, we'll watch some Star Wars and we'll watch something of hers that she wants to watch. So I managed to, especially because over lockdown, it was like the period where she wanted to watch all the movies and was getting into it, so we could watch Clone Wars and Rebels and those sort of things. And so she has watched all those once and she knows them enough, but there's been like times where things still come up and she's like, who's that? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're a normal person. I forgot that like you don't know what the species of this is, or immediately recognize someone the moment they come on screen and know exactly who they are, where they come from, and what like series of media that you've seen them in. Like they're just like, oh, I vaguely recognize that person there. Who is it? It's like, okay, here we go.
I will explain it to you right now.
So, just a recap. So, for episode 1, what you said it was kind of like here, there, and everywhere. But did you enjoy the episode as a whole?
Yeah, I think enjoy in terms of like I was like, okay, now show me what you've got. Like, I think it was just because it was a very short episode, and they went to 5 different places. I kind of was just like, okay, I know these people now. I know these people. I appreciate showing me, the evolution of Grief Karga and everything. But all right, did we need to do this in the premiere episode? Let's go. Let's address the elephant in the room for the people that haven't watched Book of Boba Fett. Let's do that, and they didn't, which surprised me. But it was okay. I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it, but it was okay. I sort of tolerated it and went, okay, let's see episode 2. Let's see the rest of the series. And like I said at the start, thankfully, we do have something that happens.
Wonderful. Well, hello there, Ben. We have not started talking about the episode as of yet. Sorry, I checked my message. When I sent it to you, it said it's going to be in 7 hours, but it must have been a delay and it must have been sent late. So I should have just said the time more clearly, but fear not, still here. We've got over another hour, so it's all good, and all we've done is sort of recap our sort of feelings with live action shows and things like that. So before we even delve into the episode with yourself, I know that you have been very critical of certain live action shows that Disney have put out. However, just like myself and Andy have been speaking about before you showed up, was Andor is so good. And it's a level of Star Wars that we've all been hoping for that none of us have really got, because we were getting like Mandalorian and Kenobi and Boba Fett, which are all great for me in their own rights, but do lack in certain areas. And obviously those areas affect yourself more than, say, me in certain respects. But I can still see the critical lens of them. But then Andor comes out and you think, this is so amazing. Why have you not been capable of making something this good from there? That's what we've been talking about, Ben. I know you've got some opinions on that, so please share us some of your opinions of that before we dig into Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2.
Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me. Mike, Andy, it's not the first time seeing you as well.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, on the flights to you, my X-foil was damaged. I don't know if it's Admiral Thrawn at play here. The message got scrambled. Something happened along the way. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, you're all good.
We can.
Perfect. Awesome. So, yeah, to get immediately jump into it, it's lovely being amongst the gentlemen who can have this passionate debate about all Star Wars things, disagree, and still being able to see the other side and say, oh, I see where this person is coming from. I see what he's liking in it. So first things first, I think in general, overall, Disney has been doing pretty well. We got some shows that I can honestly admit to being absolutely stellar, amazing. Mike, I know you're a huge Rebels fan, so am I. The Bad Batch, the last episode, oh my God, holy smokes, amazing. You know, everything comes with a varying degree of quality. And when we analyze quality in TV shows, you got to look at the range of things that are available to us. I mean, you have Breaking Bad on one side, and you have Kevin Sorbo's Hercules Legendary Adventures on the other, which I'm currently rewatching. I can't believe how much fun I'm actually having with it, because there's different sets of expectations when you're coming into a campy, catchy, stupid, fun kind of show that still has a heart. And then you look at something which is Andor, which tries to pitch itself as something that is highly political and narrative and subtext, you know, and then layered, you know, character interactions. You come with a different set of expectations. Now we're going to talk about the Mandalorian show as well. It all depends on A, your personal bias, B, the actual technical execution of the show, writing, camera work, you know, actor performance, and so forth. And then you kind of derive from all of that as a fan, and you tell yourself, well, you know what? This might be lacking on a technical aspect, but I like it. Or this is absolutely stellar, amazing show, but it's just, I'm not vibing with it. It doesn't click with the type of storyline that I'm interested in Star Wars. So I think the best way to navigate all of that, I don't know if I'm answering the question or not.
You are, very great. You're making a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's all depends how you arrive at it. And I think when we'll touch upon the Mandalorian show, I had certain expectations from it. And those expectations were not based on what I personally want from it. It's solely based on what you're showing me, what are you marketing, what the trailers look like, who's attached to the project. You know, you have to be realistic about it. You can't expect Stanley Kubrick level of directing from, I don't know, Rebels Episode 3 or something like that. It just doesn't make any sense, right? As an adult, you have to tell yourself, what am I looking for? What is the show is going to present? So overall, I'm happy we have Disney Plus. I'm happy we have streaming era of Star Wars shows, give or take. You know, a couple of shows I loved, a couple of shows are mediocrity. I'm going to forget about them tomorrow as soon as we get off air. So what? Overall, I'm enjoying it. I'm here along for the ride. The Disney Star Wars has not slighted me wrongly to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm canceling Disney Plus. Goodbye, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. Brilliant. Yeah. So we'll delve straight on in, because I agree with a lot of the things you've said there. But I'm glad that, you know, even as yourself who is critical, it's like, it's fine to be critical, and some shows give them fair thoughts. It's a very balanced perspective, and that's what myself and Andy share in a lot of ways as well. That's exactly what we were talking about before you showed up.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Perfect.
100%.
It's like you've been here the whole time. But we delve right in. So I personally did enjoy Mandalorian Series 3, Episode 1. I thought it was a good premiere episode. You know, nothing specifically wowed me, but I said I liked a lot of the little things. It made me feel like, yes, I'm kind of entering in, you know, Star Wars. I've kind of walked through the gates in a way of a little thing, and I've just stopped. And now I'm getting into Episode 2. So it's called The Mines of Mandalore, and this focuses a lot on Bo-Katan as well. And there's a lot of imagery with the Darksaber, and I think things that have been linked with Book of Boba Fett as well that I think are very important here. So we'll get straight on into it. It starts off with Peli Motto, and she sells R5D4 to Mandalorian. So that is a nostalgic thing. It's come from Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian before, but a lot of us fans know it's from the original Star Wars, A New Hope, and it's the droid that smokes, and then it means that R2 gets sold to 3PO. And then going even further than that, a story that a lot of people may not enjoy is in the Certain Point of View books, that droid actually speaks to R2D2, and R2D2 basically convinces him, I've got this thing I need to do. Can you please do something about this? I need to stick with my friend, in essence. And so because of this droid's sacrifice, it's kind of come back into it. So different layers of Star Wars that you know kind of feel differently about this droid. So we'll start with you, Andy. R5D4, the nostalgia trip. What do you think about that? And any thoughts with Peli Motto if you want to sprinkle them in?
I think it was a very sort of nice little moment, wasn't it? Obviously, we've seen him in the last season. I loved how he sort of had this attitude of like, I'm not going on this journey. I don't want to get sold. I don't want to go anywhere. It adds like I stick with the thing like that. He's just a bit of a broken mess, you know. I love he's completely a flawed droid. We've seen him break before. We do fear for him. As soon as he saw the Mandalorian, you go, "Oh no, what's going to happen to him? Is he going to break again? Is something going to happen? You know, is his motivator going to go? You know." So it was kind of like a little sort of like, "Oh, bless him. He actually gets to go on an adventure." But I hope he doesn't get destroyed or anything like that. So I did quite enjoy it. Again, like his refusal to move forward when he sort of like takes a little roll back, and she goes, "Well, hang on, no, you've got to go." I did enjoy it. I thought it was quite sweet. He just needs a bit of a paint job, doesn't he? Why has she not painted him?
We've got kind of an oil bath, got a little bit of that after the oil bath, and suddenly all his paintwork looked a little bit better. And it's like, was that an oil bath, or was that like you've changed the whole shell?
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Ben? What do you think of R5D4?
Now, we're not jumping ahead to the Mando and your arrival. We're just strictly talking about
tiny little tease, and then we'll dive straight on in just this little thing before I forget. R5D4. It's a fun little thing, because if we get into all the other stuff, we're going to forget the little guy. So what do you think about him? That kind of little low-level cameo kind of being in the show, and what do you kind of think of like Andy's opinion with how he was presented?
Well, first of all, you guys are going to drop me right to the bottom of Star Wars experts, because up to this point, I wasn't sure if he's exactly the one from A New Hope. So no nostalgic feelings attached. Nice. Maybe I didn't research it. I was like, okay, it's the same looking model.
It's in the subtitle, because I watched a lot of the Star Wars stuff with subtitles now, especially for name things. So it's really handy for me. So I was like, oh yeah, it definitely has been confirmed. So that's cheating.
you see how much me and subtitles are friends. Pretty much. No. right. But I'm very finicky when it comes to cameos, because it's okay to kind of like stroke your nostalgia and say like, oh, look, do you remember this? I loved the one to bring another example of Star Wars in the Solo show, and like, I'm wanted at 12 systems. It was just a spot. It's almost like a comedic punchline. When it's timed really well, a cameo can really amplify a scene and just get out of your way, and you commence with a story. In the case of this episode, there's a couple of things. The moment that they show a droid, you think to yourself, okay, is this going to be a one kind of like off thing? We'll see him in this little scene, so the Peli Motto gets to deliver her whimsical line, and then he disappears? Or is there more utility to this character? Is he going to be exploited in the episode, as we will further discuss? So I was kind of not irritated by it. I usually get irritated when cameos are there when the rest of your story, the rest of your blueprint, so to speak, of a show or a movie is lacking. And you have to heavily rely on as a crutch, and like, oh, by the way, you know, we care about the fans. Let's put Ahsoka over here, or let's put little R5 droid over there, because we care. That doesn't stick if you don't have a powerful scene, powerful moment, a comedic moment, which also touches you in some kind of like emotional level. In this particular scene, I loved Peli Motto in season 1 and 2. In here, there's a great dissonance, because I didn't get the chance to talk with you guys about the first episode. Let's discuss here what we have in front of us.
Go ahead.
From the visual standpoint, it is absolutely immaculate. I don't know what it is, whether it's Jon Favreau's writing style or whether how the directors per episodes are communicating with one another. The way that the performance is delivered on screen and the lines being delivered, there's no tension, no anticipation, no interest whatsoever with me. So I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, all right. They got to go through the motions of being fun and interesting to the crowd. I don't know whether it's me getting old, advanced in my 41 years of age and being jaded, or honestly just have a very clear, receptive mind, because I'm open to all of it. I'm like, okay, just feed me this episode. Let's see if it's better. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm ready to fall asleep. So it didn't work for me from that scene. In the scene, I just didn't like that the rest of the scene didn't kind of capture my interest.
Mm-hmm. I see. And Andy, Peli Motto, what do you think of her?
In this scene or in general? Or are we talking Andy right now?
I'll ask Andy first with just in general as well, because Ben said you liked her in series 1 and 2. Yeah. So what about you in series 1 and 2, Andy? And then we'll.
Yeah, I think. Well, it kind of goes back to what I said about the first episode, where the characters are here. We're showing you these characters that you know again. It kind of felt a bit like that. I feel like she served her purpose when she built Mando's new starship. That was sort of like a resounding, finale for her character. Look, I know I'm a bit of a backwater mechanic, but look at this fantastic ship I've just created for you. It's almost like, in a way, the writers can't seem to figure out a way to end a character's arc. In a way, that they found a reason for Mando to come yet again to Tatooine, magical place. We love going there. But I mean, it's again similar to like Ben said. It's nothing against her as a performer. I think she's a really good performer. I think she does justice to what she's given. She's got a great charisma with the droids that she has. These CGI characters. She's got great charisma with the Jawas. I love when she talks to the Jawas. I think it's spot on. If they're doing some voice modulation with her when she's speaking in Jawa tongue, I don't know, but if it is just her normal dialogue with what's been written for her and she's speaking it, from page, it's really well done. Great credit to her. I just think, I thought we wouldn't see her again after she built his starship. And as much as I found it quite enjoyable watching, the R droid, being forced on this journey, I was kind of like, she didn't really bring anything to the table. It could have been in reality, it could have been any droid from anywhere. Mando needs a droid companion. Realistically, it could have been any droid from anywhere. He could have just picked up one from anyone else, rescued one from somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we need to see her again? I'm guessing we probably will see her again if they're going to return the droid. But
I think she's going to be a regular. I think that's probably. And I was in a similar camp to you. I haven't got anything against Peli Motto and agree everything with what you said about Amy Sedaris acting. And I was like, okay, we're not going to see. Mando's ready to go on his journey. He's going to I was like, episode starts, and you're like, oh, what's he going to do? And it's like, okay, he's going to get the IG unit memory thing, then he's going to go to Mandalore. And then I saw the episode title, and it was like, oh, Mines of Mandalore. He's going to go straight there with IG-11. That was easy and quick. And then I was like, oh, no, wait, it's not that. We're doing another droid, doing like a switcheroo. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, Tatooine again. I was like, I haven't got anything necessarily against Peli Motto. And I understand why Mando's story goes back to her because he trusts her. But I'm like, I was more annoyed with Tatooine. I was like, okay, can we have a little bit of time away from the magical desert place? Ben, what do you have to say the rest about Peli Motto and Tatooine?
I sort of politely disagree with Andy. I understand where you're coming from, Andy, because you sort of want to see a progression of character and you see sort of like a narrative finality and say like, well, okay, this character has been integrated into the story. They serve their purpose. What's next? Keep giving us. In her particular instance, I think the way that she was set up, and please feel free to disagree, I feel that she's almost like your quest giver. She's almost like Sid in them. I assume you're also watching the Bad Batch show, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if we can kind of perceive the parallel to Sid, she's like, hey, you're back in town on Tatooine, I'll take care of you. Oh, now you need this, or you need this. You can't keep exploiting her because the nature of the performance, because the way that she projects herself, she's your comedic relief, honestly, in this show. Because besides her, yeah, there's some how do you call it? Not swashbuckling, but slapstick humor involving Grogu, but in general, he doesn't speak. So he can't deliver those funny punchlines. She can. It's her job to do it in this show. So once again, her place, her spot where she fixes the ships, it's almost like a hub for Din Djarin. And I won't be surprised in season 7, he still comes back. And maybe perhaps they can integrate her more and give her more challenging things to do. Let's say her workshop gets completely destroyed and she's out of a job. And she's like scavenging on Tatooine, same way Rey was on Jakku. You can keep evolving her in different ways. And maybe you're right. Maybe in this particular instance, this episode 2, like we don't see them spinning it and making it interesting just yet.
No, that's a fair point. I'll give you that one. I just feel like I don't know whether we've got multiple quest givers. Because it was the same thing in the first episode, wasn't it? It was Grief Karga, go in there, or now you need to go and find the IG memory stick. You know, I've got some memory sticks here. Do you want? You can have one if you want. I think it's a very minor gripe for me, but I don't know. I think, like I was saying to Mike before you came on, I'm in like a weird sort of place where with this series, like I do kind of want forward thrust. I want forward momentum. Mm-hmm. I do just worry that we backtrack quite a lot. It is like playing an RPG game, watching the show. We go somewhere, we go great distances, and then we turn back and go to that place we were before to speak to the same person. Then we head out again, and then we go a little bit further, and then we turn back and we go and see another person that we spoke to earlier, and then we double back onto that person before, and then we head off a little bit further.
Zelda Wind Waker.
Yeah.
Exactly. I do love that game, to be fair, but that is true.
That's just what it feels like to me. It feels like for every 2 steps we do take a little step back so that we don't go too far ahead and rush things. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, considering these episodes are only half an hour, 40 minutes, I think next week's is nearly an hour.
Oh, really?
You know, it does sort of, it gives me a little bit of like, okay, if you cut out a lot of this stuff, how long and how deep is actually the story? But again, that's just me delving really into this is the angry Andy sort of. I'm thinking about the fucking writing and getting so caught up in the writing and everything into it. Exactly what you said, Ben, when you first came on. Like if you get in there, you find issues. That's where I come asunder like the Titanic.
I think we all are to an extent.
Yeah, it happens even with me with Obi-Wan Kenobi. I do really enjoy that show, but I found that really episode 3 and episode 6 have elements and moments in and scenes that I enjoy so much it outweighs the weaker elements of the show. But I'm like, it's not the kind of thing I want to rewatch the whole thing again to experience. I'm just kind of, you know, dop of those 2 main episodes. And so sinking back into sort of Mandalore and the Mandalorian and them going to Mandalore. So it kind of starts off with R5 being useful and going out and getting sort of air pressure, and then getting air pressure, checking the atmosphere, and, you know, Mando's got his pressurized helmet as well and leaves Grogu in the pod and goes off to find R5. And then they fight these creatures. I think they're called the Alanites or something similar to that. Mm-hmm. And he fights that, and then he uses the Darksaber. And he's, you know, it's very heavy to him, as we saw in Book of Boba Fett. He hasn't quite mastered the blade. He's not really in tune with it. There's something kind of blocking him. There's something that's not quite jiving with him and the blade. And you see he's heavily using it, and he barely gets out of it. And then he gets captured by that robot crazy thing, which I think the design of that cyborg thing is amazing. I loved that. So getting straight into it then, Ben, with this, how the kind of the more I kind of got alien sort of vibes, those sort of things, landing on a planet, darkness around, and then it kind of turning into a bit of action. How did you feel about this sort of part of the episode, sort of just before, kind of as he gets caught by the robot-y thing, that sort of third, I suppose?
I was enamored with it visually, and you very fairly brought aliens into it because it's an obvious inspiration. You could see it in the shadows, in the camera work. I'm like, okay, cool, I see. And when Grievous 2.0 shows up, from this point forward, I will refer to that character. To me, he is Grievous 2.0. Somehow Grievous survived. Just amazing craftsmanship, amazing art. When you say like, oh, you know, like you have like a very extreme view of Disney. Everything that Disney does is. Can you look at the picture? All right, the story is not there. We can have that discussion here on the side. Can you just recognize what's on the screen? Holy crap, it's amazing. So that sort of gets you. But then, remember, I spoke earlier in our conversation about it all depends what kind of viewer you are. So if you're sort of viewer like my good friend William, who loves prequel trilogy, he loves the originals, he is the type of Star Wars fan who's like, all right, when the X-Wings are flying by, when the next shootout is going to happen, when Han Solo is going to take out his blaster, if that's what you're looking for, which is totally fine for me, you'll get the most out of that scene. For me, again, it's overall the first and second episodes in Series 3 didn't work for me. But I was sort of attached to the screen. I was saying, am I compelled enough to continue this episode? Because I might as well just turn it off and go do something else. Because why sit down and talk about it for an hour with your buddies, or go on your channel and review an episode spitting garbage about it if you're not enjoying it, right? Might as well spend your time differently. I was glued enough to the screen to say, like, bro, like, what's the next screen? What's the next shot? What are they going to do visually here? How is this robot is going to move? Like, is it all CG? How much of it is it practical? So your inner Star Wars nerddom was they found that button. Like, they punched the Benjamin button. I was like, all right, let's keep watching.
What about you, Andy? What are your thoughts on all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, visually, the whole devastation of Mandalore just looks absolutely superb. I think I lamented in my review for the first episode of it. That was like, I want to get to see what Mandalore's like. Is it going to be not what they think? Is there going to be, people still alive there? Is there going to be breathable atmosphere? All of this, and for me, it was almost like the opening start of Terminator 2, where it's just complete and utter darkness, devastation. Because that's the way they put it across in Mandalorian season 2. When you see the K2SO droids coming through the fire and everything. Yeah, I think that was in Mando 2, wasn't it?
I think it's Book of Boba Fett, actually.
Is
I think
it
it's when
Book of
the
Boba Fett?
Armorer talks about it.
Yes.
The Darksaber.
Yes.
Another reason
yes,
for people to watch Book of Boba Fett if they haven't already.
Yeah.
Keep telling people.
You get those striking images of very Terminator 2, the K2SO droids coming through, the TIE fighters, the TIE bombers, all of that.
And everyone of Mando had a Terminator reference as well, sorry. There's a Terminator reference. Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to.
So with this, I almost got like, when the opening credits, Terminator 2, Sarah Connor talking, when Mando's there, even when we see later on the episode when another character comes later on, we see, the very same thing, and they basically talk about like the ultra devastation, how the thermo bombs, whatever they were, just ruined everything, and how beautiful everything looked beforehand. I think it was just fascinating to see how much devastation was absolutely wrought by the Empire. It wasn't just simply, bombing a few cities. They glassed the planet. They nuked it from orbit, aliens, and just beautiful in pure ultra ashen grey of nuclear warfare. And then when we get into the darkness and we see that there are creatures still alive, we see this robot creature. It's almost like a classic stop motion sensibility about the way the creature moved, the mechanical creature moved. The whole spider thing reminded me a bit of sort of like, when Darth Maul's created his spider legs, and how sort of like hellish and all over the place it looks like it's been constructed, like he's built them himself. Well, yeah, I got this same vibe from this creature. It's like, in amongst all this devastation, it's managed to pull this leg from somewhere, this bit of equipment from this bit. It's just bizarre. It's like we haven't really seen something so horrifying looking, Frankenstein in Star Wars, other than the animated Darth Maul.
And Grievous.
And Grievous, yeah, of course. But Grievous was a bit too clean for me, even though he was hunched over and a bit.
The only part was the chest opening bit. That's the only part where you're like,
exactly.
Where's the close up of the eye gunk?
yeah. But other than that, Grievous was a bit too clean for me. I do like Grievous. I think I prefer him more in Clone Wars series than in the film. But it was just how dark and depressing, and how absolutely devastated the entire planet is, that I just found utterly fascinating. And that's what I wanted to see. That's what I hoped we would see. We'd see, like, even though there is still breathable atmosphere, there's still hope in a way for Mandalore. It is utterly devastated. Whether it can ever be rebuilt, who knows? But yeah, the only thing I will say is when the fighting, I wanted the brightness up by about 10. Just turn it up a bit 10, just so I can see a bit more. When they were fighting, it reminded me a bit of Kenobi. I think when they were having the lightsaber duel and it was all dark and all you could see with the blaze, I was like, I kind of want to see their faces. Obviously, you can't see Mando's face, but I kind of wanted to see exactly what he's doing, where he was struggling. Like you said, with the Darksaber, that great contrast of, this black saber brilliantly haloed by this white light. It looked fabulous in the dark, but just a little bit more brighter. And it does fascinate me that he really struggles with the weight of the sword. It's almost like the burden is not his to carry that sword. It's somebody else's burden. It's very, very Arthurian. He's somehow got it from the stone, but it isn't his. He is not the king. So, yeah, fascinating for me. Really is fascinating.
And I love that element. And we'll link in with, obviously, the character comes through. People know by now these are spoiler chats because we're talking about the whole episode. But what comes in is Bo-Katan. She comes into this, and you get Mando gets captured by that cyborg thing, which I agree with everything you guys have said about it. I think it looks incredible. My only qualm is like, oh, it's gone. I hope that we get to see more, and that's not just the only time we ever see anything like that. I want that to be like a big bad, maybe in the seasons coming. Maybe there's like a factory that's like making these weird organic, or maybe it's all part of one life form. Maybe it's like Dirge from Legends. Dirge is in the comics in some ways. Maybe it's connected to that in some way. There's those creatures. Who knows? I want them to explore that more. But coming in with Bo-Katan, so one of the things I loved the most about this was Katie Sackhoff is brilliant, but the action scenes, I was like, I know I like Mando for its action scenes when done well. I'm not only in it for the action scenes, but I think a combination of seeing Mandalore, as you described it, Andy, very beautifully, obviously beautifully ugly in a lot of ways, like an oxymoron. It's amazing. I like the lore, and I like the conversations that they have there, and you get this feel of it. And being, Clone Wars fans and things, we know in animation what Mandalorian civilization looks like. And then we get to see her pick up the blade, and she uses it incredibly. The difference between them using it is like when you see in some of the prequels, or more so like Clone Wars and things, when you watch a master, or like samurai films, you watch a master do something and it's like da 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 da, perfect, and then the apprentice tries to do it and he's like over swinging and dropping and losing the weapon and that kind of thing. And it was in the reverse, and you're like, oh, Mando only just beat those guys, and Mando's a really good fighter. And then you see Bo-Katan, you're like, oh my god. And like Bo-Katan is just like so fluid with the blade. And it's been that thing that obviously people who don't know about Rebels and Clone Wars don't know the volume of what that blade means to her. And in these shots, when you see that kind of thing, it's like part of you is like, well, I love Mando having the Darksaber because it's obviously very cool, and is Mando the Mandalorian because he's going to become the next leader of Mandalore. That's obviously a very common fan theory. But like Bo-Katan does have a lot of rights in a certain way to that, and how did she lose this? And it keeps feeding that question of how did Gideon get that? What did happen? We've got breadcrumbs in Rebels, but what happened? She's still, I thought when she picked up the Darksaber it might have been heavy for her, but it wasn't. And it was like, okay, so you're specifically trying to show that she is more adept with the blade they keep talking about is people who want to lead Mandalore. So Ben, what are your sort of thoughts and things on Bo-Katan, the Darksaber, all that kind of stuff?
In the Mines of Moria? Once again, it's striking, it's beautiful. Please forgive me for being a little bit jaded here if I come across
go ahead.
I mentioned about that timing is everything, and very briefly, if I may, just to touch on the first episode, is what really rubbed me the wrong way is that when this season starts off is why are Din Djarin and Grogu jumping through the same exact hoops that they should have been in season 1. There is no sense of progression. I need to be a Mandalorian. I need to prove myself. Yeah, dude, you were after the same goal in the first season. But here, to put, add more salt to the wound is, no, but before I go and prove myself, I need to get a droid as well. Because we didn't have enough side missions and, derailing episodes before. Let's add one more to the bunch. It's like, all right. So here, it's already a very tough sell where you're in the mines of Moria, Mandaloria, trying to go on the journey with this character, which it's his show. It's his journey. It's his adventure. And Bo-Katan is there ripping through the veils of jumping on screen. It's like, let me help you, kid. Let me instruct you. I'm here to save the freaking day because they pretty much well know how much receptive the audience is to the Clone War era material. We're all huge fans of the Clone Wars show. It's an instant sell. It's gonna work. It's gonna click with us Star Wars simps. If I may, I say jokingly, guys, please don't take it seriously. Like, Bo-Katan plus, please remind the actress's name, Katie
Sackhoff.
Yeah, this gorgeous looking woman. She kicks ass in this role. Nothing against her, but it's his stardom, it's his journey, and he almost feels like a tennis ball that's being bouncing from episode to episode without much relevant agency of his own. Let me lead you on here. And this is where the next part I'd like to talk about, just one more minute. We have to separate between your personal bias and the quality of the show. I'm going to enter here this conversation with my personal bias. I came into this whole Disney Star Wars acquisition as a giant Knights of the Old Republic fan. The comic books, the video games, the Tales of the Jedi comic books, the Karen Travis Mandalorians, which are incomparable. And I mean, it's no surprise she left the project, because when her stuff was scrapped and we were introduced with this pacifist nation that tried to appeal to Legends fans during George Lucas's days by trying to make them warlike, but not really warlike. Pacifists, but with like crazy terrorist cult that lives on a nearby moon. It was like, I felt like it was somewhat directionless in the Clone Wars show. I eventually accepted it, because you have to say, look, it's not what it was before. Let's stick to the program here. And eventually I came to love it in the Clone Wars show. But here, once again, we're doing the same repeating patterns with Din Djarin. And when Bo-Katan enters the scene, I just didn't care enough. I'm like, I don't care about this version of Mandalore as much. Plus, add to that the overall writing of the show. Plus, add to that, you see where I'm going with this? Plus, add to that to the fact that Din Djarin is not where he's supposed to be in terms of character progression or his mental state from season 1. So it's a conglomeration of things, which eventually makes you believe whether you're going to lean towards this episode or lean against it. That's what it was. And when you completely turn off your brain and say, like, okay, Benjamin, this episode is not just made for you. And you start watching it completely detached. Yeah, some really good dialogue here. Really interesting writing. I really appreciate the fact that at least they give us little crumbs from before. You know, when you hear something like Mandalore the Great, perhaps not me, but another fan will be like, oh my God, yes, they referenced it. Awesome. You know, they didn't forget about us. This is so sweet. I don't rely on that. That's not what interests me. I don't care what you're showing me. I don't care if it's canon or legends. I solely judge by the strength of the quality of the story. If it's something that I'm not used to, if it's not the version of Mandalore that I like, but the powerful story is there indeed, that's it. I can't say nothing about it. I'm going to say, wow, this is awesome. This was like a really awkward moment where I'm like, yes, we got to the good part in the episode. The whole thing with Peli Motto is not there emotionally. Here, I'm like, couldn't we have the rest of the episode just like this with the same kind of delivery? So it was a bittersweet experience.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say about this is one thing I'm a little bit annoyed at in this episode is when Din goes into the waters and he has that moment, you know, where he kind of starts saying the creed. I was like, I almost said it out loud, but I didn't want to. But I was like, I hope he actually gets to finish this and this can just be a nice emotional moment rather than it getting interrupted, because like, it's such a trope where anyone does anything of significance in any show, and it's like the MCU does it a lot, and I love the MCU and a variety of MCU things, but it's like here's this really important thing, but we can't have a minute or two without a quip, action, or a lore dump. So here is about 15 seconds of him walking in and this emotional music, and you're really starting to feel it, and then something attacks him and pulls him under the water, and you're like, this is episode 2 of Mandalorian. He's not in any danger. We know he's not. Okay, Bo-Katan saves him again. She already saved him. You know, if they, and it was like, I don't really care. And then they swam up and you saw it was a giant, I think, mythosaur, which is, you know, the mythical being and is very popular in legends, and it's what his sigil is about and all this kind of other things, which is cool. But I'm like, what they should have done is had him going in there, doing his thing, and then him feel vibration in the water, pull out, and you see the thing come out of the water. And then go back in. That would have been a nod all the fans would have seen. That would have been like a really nice emotional moment for him and a meaning. And it wouldn't have been this just unnecessary action scene. Like, and the problem is with serialized episodes like Mandalorian, and it's akin to a lot of the older sort of style of shows as well, is the week by week thing is a lot of the time main characters just will not, nothing major happens to the main cast in like certain episodes. You know, the middle season stuff doesn't really happen. If you have a mid-series break, then it will happen just before the mid-series break, just after, and then at the end. But the series finale is where all the big things happen. So Bo-Katan and Mandalorian aren't in any real danger. So you've undercut a moment. Which is meant to be, powerful and really could mean something, and you want to throw this mythosaur thing in there, but you're just like, why have you done this in this way? This action, you've already had 2 sets of action with Mandalorian fighting these things and Bo-Katan, and you've undercut it with this action. And that really,
it was such an intimate, small scene, and it would have worked much better if it was a small, intimate scene. And sometimes, I question Jon Favreau's decision-making here, because less is more.
Yes.
Like, when are you going to learn?
Yes.
You don't wow fans with big CGI monsters. Like, how many freaking times have we seen it? People connect with something that a simple line of, The Last Jedi, Mike, it's my favorite Star Wars movie since, Return of the Jedi. It's the simple lines, like, nobody's ever truly dead. I'm just saying this line gives me goosebumps because I connected it with a very real moments that I had in life. It's not these giant creatures that nobody's going to remember tomorrow. Like, it's a shame.
I agree 100%. It's my biggest sort of turn off from the Marvel movies at the minute, because it's characters are saying things in film to fill dead air because there's no weight behind what we're being shown or told in the writing. And my biggest thing is, if you've got nothing important to say, your character shouldn't be saying anything at all. Because if the film is any good, if the writing's any good, the visuals, the acting, reactions will do all the work for you. And I feel like with the end of this episode, we were robbed of a very spiritual moment, not just for Din, but for Bo-Katan as well. Because when he's slowly immersing himself into the water and doing this, the chant, saying the words, the camera sort of pulls toward her, and like a very slow close-up, and you can see a shift in her opinion, a shift in her thought process. She sees how fundamental belief is key and important to some people, and that we don't all have to be the same. We can be these different people. We can be these different organizations within one civilization. We can all be one people with our different fundamental beliefs. You see that. But we're robbed of the poignant tipping point in favor of him. Does he get dragged down or does he fall? Because there's like, when she dives in, the steps are missing.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I was a bit confused when she dives in. I was like, well,
is he a complete
did he get pulled down,
not,
or did he just fall in and his armor, the weight of his armor, just pulled him right the way down?
That's a good point, actually.
That's what I was a bit confused at, which kind of is even worse if it was an accident, because then he's a bumbling idiot and didn't watch his footing. You know what I mean? Which that kind of made me even, because when he got pulled down, I went, oh, here we go. We're doing a New Hope. Creatures pulled him under the water thing, and she's going to dive in and save him.
I thought that.
Yep, she's diving in and saving him. But then when we got down to the bottom, she rescues him with ease and pulls him up. There was no other creatures there. The mythosaur was asleep. So it wasn't the mythosaur pulled him under. So what was it? He's fallen in. He's fell in. He's missed a step and fell in the pool at the deep end. The silly bastard. Which is even worse for me, because you've robbed a very poignant spiritual moment just after she's read that tablet and lamented it, thinking, oh, this is all joke, this is all rubbish, I was here, there's nothing here. Yeah, okay, she does dive in and see the mythosaur, but you could have had it where he's completed that. He turns around, steps up, puts all his gear back on, and you could have had it where she's completely awestruck. Still a bit sort of like, why? What is the point in this? But then she sees the mythosaur off in the distance. He doesn't see it. She sees it. In amongst all that blackness, that devastation, everything in the dark that you can't see. She sees it. She knows what it is. There you go. You've got exactly the same moment you had without the needless action beats that were just in there to make you go, ooh, for no reason. Like you said, that we know they're not going to be in danger from, then we know they're not going to struggle. We know they're going to be perfectly fine. It's just, like we've said, less is more. You could have done so much more by having him have this completed full religious journey. Because when he gets up from, falling in, he's not actually completed what he was trying to do. He fell in mid-sentence. So is he going to do it again? Or are we just going to move on?
I think so, yeah. We'll be interrupted.
We're just going to move on.
I imagine they will. I would not be surprised if the next scene is them landing with the armorer and then saying bye.
That for me is even fucking worse than.
I hope not, but
yeah, I mean, This is like Ben said. This is his journey. He's almost become like a side character in his own show. I really do believe that possibly the whole thing with Grogu going to Luke was 2 seasons too early, because we don't have an onward journey for Din Djarin. We don't have an onward journey for Grogu, really. They are just facsimiles. They're people in other people's quests, people in other people's massive journeys. The Darksaber's not Din's. He's going to hand it over. He's going to do something that, because the Darksaber's always been taken by force, hasn't it? Well, he's going to hand that over. I'm going to tell you now, he's going to bend the knee and hand that Darksaber over, and there's going to be a change in Mandalorian culture.
It almost feels like the entire show, all 3 seasons, are a scrapbook of ideas, and some of them are really nice. They land really well. Particular scenes, particular episodes are really, really strong stuff. And I think it irks all 3 of us. I'm going to speak for all 3 of us. When you wanted a well thought out show that has a sense of progression, and it's not 15 but 4 seasons long, perhaps. But it so gives you so much. Like the Rebels ended on such a high note. It didn't have any noteworthy fillers to talk about, or detractions, that it remains a very focused narrative. But here in this instance, it's almost like Jon Favreau and the gang are like throwing ideas on the screen just to see what sticks. To this day, to me, Grogu has no place in this show whatsoever. He's not any sort of anchor at all. I never believed their father and son relationship at all. You're showing me a merc who agrees immediately without rhyme or reason to take on this kid, save him, and call him your child? Like, what are you talking about? And then throughout all 3 seasons so far, we see what kind of a hack job as a father he's doing. He's sending this kid to this mentor who discards him, sends him back in the middle of tribal war. I'm telling you, like, who is thinking up these ideas? Like, what are you talking about? Is this high schoolers like trying to pitch their favorite Star Wars fanfics to the Disney Plus, and they're like, awesome, let's produce this. This could be an episode in The Mandalorian. It almost feels like, in all seriousness, as an anthology. Some ideas are good, some are not. For me, I immediately lose interest. Look, Mike knows this very well from me. I will still dedicate myself to current canon Star Wars comic books. But the reason that I primarily lost interest is when you're not leading me anywhere for a certain period of time, I don't care how it gets later on. I don't care how good it is. That's it. You lost me. When Luke and Vader see each other for 25 times before The Empire Strikes Back, I gave up. I'm like, okay, that's probably enough for me.
Mm-hmm. I will say that there are the main run of Star Wars comics is arguably, I'd say, of the new canon, some of the weaker of the ongoing comic series. They're all about the Vader stuff, all about the Vader comics, guys. Vader comics and Dr. Aphra comics, they're the cool ones. But yeah, I mean, with this, with Mandalorian as well, one thing that Jon Favreau said, which I don't usually pay attention to what any of the kind of people normally say about how long shows are going to be or when they are going to finish it, things like that. I try and avoid that where I can. But Jon Favreau says, oh yeah, we don't necessarily have an ending sorted out for Mandalorian. We don't really know how long it's going to go on for. And it's like, okay, so you're basically saying you're going to do this forever until you're going to probably do this until someone declares that you should stop it, or you get bored and decide to do something else. So it's like, this is going to be the spring load. This is going to be, okay, every year everyone gets a season of Mandalorian and most people are going to watch it, and it's going to be all right to pretty good for the most part, and there's going to be a few interesting characters in there, and then what's going to happen is, if you get interested by those characters, there'll be a Bo-Katan spin-off show, and you get a whole history and all that stuff, and all the stuff from Rebels get compacted into one nice little episode in live action, and then we'll go off with that, and you'll see all the stuff that she's doing, which is not in the episodes of Mandalorian, and then we'll do the same with a lot of other characters. We're going to, Ahsoka's doing it, and obviously Ahsoka was in animation before, but that's happening there. There's other shows in the works. There's a Skeleton Crew, which sounds really cool, and I'm excited about that, but it's going to probably tie in with Mando at some point if it's set in the same era If it's set at the same time, it's going to time with Mando. They're going to do it eventually. So at some point, Jude Law is going to make some sort of quip about Grogu. That's an inevitability, it seems. And I'm just like...
Conveyor belt.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm fine if the content is good. Like, I'm fine. Like, Kenobi was fine for me. I'm happy with that. Do I want another season? Probably not. Will I watch another season? Yes. And there's probably going to be a couple of really amazing moments in there that I'm going to be like, I love those moments. But it's going to be lots of stuff that was unnecessary to get to a moment that realistically, one of Megan's criticisms of Kenobi was it has done basically nothing to any of the characters except just adjustments of dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's like, now things are slightly more streamlined in a very minor way. And as much as I enjoyed the thing in Kenobi, there's no tension in Kenobi. And the problem is with Mandalorian, because the main character is like, oh, we don't know when we're going to end it. It's like, well, then they're going to be fucking immortal, aren't they? They're going to live forever. Yeah. They're going to somehow get to the sequel trilogy days, and they're going to be in the background helping. It's going to do an extended version of Rise of Skywalker, and you're going to see the Mando's ship at that time in the background. Like, I'm being
Starfire.
Yeah, I'm going over the top on things for that, but it's one of those things that bothered me, and I'm like, I like it when it's like they go, here is a story. They've done it with Andor. Mm-hmm. You feel from Andor, from episode 1 to the final episode 12, every single thread is put together. Exactly, it's a vision. They said that with Kenobi, and although Kenobi has its faults, it didn't feel like it was necessarily going off in lots of different directions with Kenobi's story. It was some of the side parts that kind of felt, the padding in a sense that could have been the movie kind of needed to be extended. It wasn't the main sort of story. With Mando, it's like, well, we got some Mando stuff to do. We've kind of done the Grogu stuff. You know that last season where you thought you're going to have some time with Mando to really see him go dark, like a dark path, or figure his way with the Mandalorians? No, we're literally going to just, in essentially bonus content, we're going to put a whole story in there of him getting Grogu back in 2 episodes, and then he's just back, and then it's just fine. And you're like, I thought this was going to have serious ramifications to both of the characters.
Yep.
I thought Grogu was going to go away and become so torn with Mando, and he kind of flirts with the dark side of the Force a little bit more, but also becoming more powerful in some ways. Or maybe he does the opposite, and he wants to stop Mando from being as violent and things. There could have been ways for these characters to go apart and come back. That's why you separate characters, so they can grow in certain directions, and when they return, they make each other grow.
Not to bring them back 2 episodes later.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, Grogu going away meant nothing. Mando took his helmet off, and now we kind of have to fix that. So that's Series 3 done. So Series 4, we'll probably start to get into Mando stuff, but by then the Ahsoka show will have had something cool in there. So we're probably going to have him pop up there as well. So he's actually not going to do anything till Series 5 because we need to prepare for Series 4 to make sure it doesn't do too much for the Ahsoka show. And it's like, I think the Ahsoka show comes out before anyway, but all of these things I'm being, over the top on purpose. But this is a concern of, I want
sense, though.
It wanted to be,
sense.
And in a boardroom meeting of people who do enjoy Star Wars, I believe Kathleen Kennedy and everyone involved with Star Wars, I do not believe any of them are trying to destroy Star Wars. I just think they've made a couple of poor decisions, either by not thinking right or thinking the wrong things, and they've inadvertently caused some damage to a franchise, and now they're under even more pressure because of the errors they've made, and so things happening. So they're panicking, and they're like, okay, right, we've got these things, great, Andor's going fine, but Mandalorian, we need Grogu back. We need him back. We've tested it. They might have done some thing where they just, vaguely internet tested. Look, what's people's reactions to Grogu and Mando being separate? A lot of people, more sad emojis than happy ones, or then we probably need to, bring him back rather than going, the story's going to be XYZ. They're like, let's be reactionary, which is one of the issues with the sequel trilogy.
Mike, I wanted to very quickly add something there.
Please do, because I will talk forever.
What you describe as over the top, I have this gut feeling that it's unfortunately becoming a reality where I absolutely agree with you. Nobody acts on bad faith here. I will never agree with any extreme side of the argument here. No. Everybody's in the business, and movie making is the business, as it was always for George Lucas and as it is for Kathleen Kennedy, everybody else. Making good product that everybody loves and connects with on the spiritual level, it's good business for everyone, because why? People are going to come back for more. But the thing is, I feel like Star Wars is becoming Disneyfied, what we all have been afraid of, where it's buckling under the weight of its own hype. I mean, it's a global phenomenon. And in a quest to fulfill everybody's expectations, they try different things which feel lifeless, mechanical, and I'm going to sound cliche here, on demand. You push a button and here's more Star Wars up to your neck. And just when you're about to give up and wash your hands of Star Wars, a spark of imagination comes in and boom, Andor arrives and just smacks you right in the head. And once again, I love doing that. I love to extract myself from my own angle and try to see it from a different perspective. And what Andor is for me, Kenobi is for Mr. Mike over here. That's his special candy when it comes to, Disney stars. That's his stroke of genius. Who am I to say otherwise? Because once again, we all connect to storytelling from Shakespeare to, Alan Dean Foster. We connect with things on a such different personal level. On one side, you want to get upset about it. Oh, Star Wars is not what it used to be. Like, it kind of is. Because there's still tons of stuff to enjoy.
What about you, Andy? What do you think about all my rantings? Anything to
No,
add?
I agree. I don't believe any of this. These hardened, because I follow like a lot of reactions and opinions across like the YouTube versus. I'm sure Ben does as well, and yourself, Mike. So I don't subscribe to any of these fucking extreme, like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's doing it on purpose. She's trying to kill us all. I don't believe it. I think it is a case of like, maybe they did churn out too much too soon. I mean, we can look at it based on what we've heard this week. Rogue Squadron, gone. It's been shelved. Permanently, not sure. Kevin Feige's movie, gone. Shelved. Permanently, not sure. Possibly, very likely. Taika Waititi's still being planned. Are they going to announce something at Star Wars Celebration? Mike, you're going to be there. I hope they do for you. I hope they do for all of us. It does seem like they've taken the foot off the gas in terms of churning out movies, because they slammed the brakes on as soon as Rise of Skywalker came out and, quite frankly, flopped. They slammed the brakes and went, holy shit, what have we done? We have made a mistake here. We need to reconsider. We need to think. And I think purely based on sort of like the up and down reaction to Book of Boba Fett, Bad Batch being received so well, Kenobi up and down again. There must be sort of like thought process of like, well, fucking hell, how do we get this right? What do we need to do to get this right? And I think that's probably why Rogue Squadron, sadly, I was really looking forward to Rogue Squadron. I've been wanting, a focus on space combat and things like that, because we saw in Rogue One how well it can be done if it's done right, if the attention to the characters are done right. If we truly invest in some pilots. We've seen it with Top Gun Maverick. Who would have thought Top Gun Maverick last year? Everybody thought, it's a sequel to an 80s movie. Is it going to do well? Jesus, it was the best film last year, in terms of money, until Avatar came out. And it was critically acclaimed. If they could have done anything in the same vein as that, what could Rogue Squadron have been? It's just it's sad in that term. But they, in order to cancel that, they must be really sort of thinking, considering across everything. What is going to work? How is it going to work? Which is what surprised me even more, that Rogue Squadron was cancelled, because you would have thought they'd go, Top Gun Maverick just did really well. How do we pivot that into a Star Wars sort of setting? We've got Rogue Squadron here, beloved name. How do we make it work? But no, they've just gone, nah, shit can it completely. It's gone. It does make me wonder what the thought process is, where they're going, what they're doing, and by the sheer fact that you said like there's no end plan for the Mandalorian, that harkens into what I said before about like are they just going to travel around the galaxy and travel around this local star system in the mid to outer rim, go across, get a quest from Tatooine, get a quest from Grief Karga, meet some other people, do this, do that, go to Mandalore again. How's Bo-Katan doing at the moment? Oh, she's all right. They've planted the tree on Mandalore. Great, let's move on. Are they just going to keep doing that and retread until it burns itself out, or Grogu's not cute anymore? What are they going to do to keep him cute?
Capitalism is the driving force, man. It's unfortunately, on one side, right, you have the creative aspect of it. On the other one, you have no other option than to keep expanding and getting bigger, because money is at play here. And when you observe the work on even the most talented filmmakers ever, eventually they have their pitfalls because money is involved, the script was rushed, the third and 10th reason and whatever.
I do, and this that factors into my thoughts on what the finale of this season is. How do they merchandise something from this? Right, okay, so we can't have Jedi Grogu because he's left Luke. We're going to have Mandalorian armor, Baby Yoda, Baby Grogu.
Mm-hmm.
He is going. It's going to be. I just thinking in terms of what we've seen so far, even in this episode, and the first episode, we're going to have a mirroring effect. We saw a child be baptized in the waters. We're going to see another child get baptized in the waters. We're going to see a helmet created by the armorer because Din's got his his creed back. You know, they're gonna bring him in, aren't they? And it will sell. We'll see action figures. We'll see toys. We'll see
Funko Pops.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see lovely cuddly toys of Mando armor, Grogu, and it's going to be wonderful. And I'll buy it up just like everybody else. But it's like if that happens, well, where do we go from then? If this is never ending, where do we go from then? Where's the forward drive? Where's the full momentum? Where is the story? Where is the interesting narrative? How do you make it interesting? Because that sounds like a bookend. We've finished. If he does get Mandalorian armor at the end, well, no, because it's going to carry on. Well, who's it going to carry on for? Who is the series for if they're not the central characters? It baffles me a bit. And yes, I did like this episode. I liked it, but then at the same time, I still have these undercurrent of questions that just aren't sitting right for me. And it's not a fault on the series. It's not a fault on, it's not necessarily a product of Andor inflicting on my brain. I think it's just a case of like, you had a wonderful opportunity end of series 2 and you squandered it. You ended it and then you slapped it on a lunchbox and you're selling it and you're selling it and you're selling it. There's my Ian Malcolm impression. It's just making me feel a bit cynical, really. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's understandable. It's one of those things that, as much as like I love Star Wars, I love getting more Star Wars.
Yeah,
but there's, as Ben said earlier on this conversation, there's loads of great Star Wars content. The High Republic, as people may be able to see behind me, I've got all the High Republic books, all the illustrated ones. I've got everything to do with High Republic.
There's more than printed. I thought. There's a lot more there than I thought. I've got two. I've got the main series, the 2 novels.
Yeah, that's the 2. Oh God, it's not mirrored, so it's harder for me when I look at the camera. These 2 are Rising Storm and Fallen Star, Light of the Jedi's downstairs because Megan's reading it. Then there's the 3 YA novels, the junior novels, and then the blue ones are Phase 2. And then that's this is Chronicles of the Jedi, which is basically the High Republic from the perspective of the Jedi, like it's a guidebook to the events of what's happened so far. And then that's the art book.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah,
based on that, do you hope? Well, do you want to see anything live action in the form of the High Republic, or do you want them to steer clear for fear of diluting in a similar way to what we're seeing here? Do you want them to stay away from it? Do you want to keep it in book form to sort of keep that allure of mystery? Because I've read the first book. I've got the second one. I can't remember what it's called. Rising Storm. That's it. I've got that. I've not started it yet. But reading it, I was like, oh, it would look lovely. I think seeing some of the Jedi garb, the different quality of lightsabers, how clean and pristine they probably look just from reading it. My imagination firing because, as you know, I love lightsabers. I would probably buy them all if they started releasing them. But at the same time, I was like, oh God, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this live. I want to keep this in here because I have concerns that you would dilute it or that it wouldn't translate well and therefore you'd undermine everything that would happen. I'm not going to be a completionist with the High Republic, but in terms of, what limited I've been able to read. I want to keep. I don't want to see it. Old Republic, thousands of years before, possibly, but pre-Old Republic, to be quite honest. Like, a long time ago. There we go. A long time ago in that galaxy far, far away. But High Republic, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
I want them to finish. They're going to. So I want them to finish the books and stuff and have what I describe the films as is pillars of big galactic events. That's why, although I do enjoy Solo, and every watch of Solo I enjoy it more than I did, I think it's quite a flat movie. There's not a huge amount of peaks and bounds. I think it would have worked really well as a series.
Yeah.
So and Rogue One does work as a movie, but equally that could have worked kind of as a series as well. Obviously, Andor's kind of the between mile for that. But with movie is big galactic events, each one is indicating some major turn in galactic history. Even if the events don't seem very big, finding Anakin Skywalker and Phantom Menace is arguably the biggest moment in galactic history. So it's these weird little things that the film should be. So I want on the High Republic to do that era. They've said that they've got plans when the High Republic is over. Fear not, High Republic fans. They're developing something else, which no one's speaking about. What I expect that's going to be is an era that's not in Legends to my knowledge. It might be. Is just the Young Republic, I think is like a banner that I'd say, because that could be from when the Sith and Jedi Wars end, 1,000 years ago, whatever, from the Skywalker Saga, up to where the High Republic is, because the High Republic's gone back 200 years before the Skywalker Saga, then another 150 years before that. I think the years between the Sith Wars and High Republic, on that to be books as well. Before that, with actual Sith stuff, that's what I want to be on the screen. They are doing an animated series for the High Republic. It's really, really kid-friendly. So I don't know how that's going to be. But I'm going to watch it anyway. But we'll see how kid-friendly it is, if it's more Rebels kind of stuff or if it's actually really young. But live action, once the books are out, once all of the publishing stuff have done the stories they want to do, I would be happy for them either to do a series about a peripheral background character that we barely know, that just happens to be at most of these big events that we see in the High Republic, that I won't spoil for you, Andy, but because of the scale of them, you have the capacity that every bit of media content is basically a different perspective of certain events that happen in the High Republic. So you have the wiggle room to just be like, here's a character, if you look in the comic, there's a background, there's a random species in the background that's unnamed. That's the character. You could see it in very bits and pieces, or they've mentioned their name is mentioned like once or twice in the books, or a completely new character. But I don't think I necessarily would want an adaptation, because then it's like, why would anyone bother picking up the books? If you do a book of a series or something like that, and you can expand on it like they've been doing with the canon novels, that makes sense to me. But if you're going to do it, and I've been lazy with this with other stuff that's been coming out on live action stuff, I'm like, why would I spend 8 to 14 hours reading a book if I can spend 2 hours watching a movie? Ben, I wonder, as a big Legends fan, I know we're starting to wrap up and we're going on a big tangent here, but as a big Legends fan, I want to know, with you, both of the High Republic and with a lot of the content you've consumed from Legends, what's your opinion of it going live action and on screen? What are your thoughts on that?
So I want to offer you guys the way I filter it, the way I look at it. I can absolutely sympathize with Andy when he says, look, the books seem to be such an interesting chunk of this universe that it's carving its own pathway and also its own niche audience. I don't want it to be diluted by what's in the films. And you, Mike, mentioned that the movies are sort of, in a way, for you, are the major pillars, and everything else sort of bounces off from that. When I started reading in the late 90s and kept progressing, I still haven't read full Legends set of books. I'm over halfway, maybe like 60% through. I started realizing, and I was never a fan who was solely attached to Skywalker name or Skywalker bloodline. To me, the appeal was that Luke, not as a Skywalker, but as a village bumpkin who became a hero, and I was interested in where his journeys go past the films. So here is an alternative way of looking at it. Movies are just windows. They're glimpses at this vast, vast universe, because my philosophy is you can take an archetype like Han Solo, Leia, Luke Skywalker, Lando Calrissian, and you can translate into a different character, take a different age for publishing, like 2023 is much different from 1998, and you can speak with a modern voice and kind of like reignite that heroic legend, the Star Wars motif, over and over and over again into freaking infinity. And to be honest with you, I am enjoying the High Republic. I partake, just like you. I have all of those books. I just don't have enough space to show them all off. But when trust me when I say this, guys, Mike, I can't wait to speak to you when you're going to get to and finish the New Jedi Order, which I'm currently breaking down with Meg. When you have 19 books of very, very focused, and it's hours upon hours of entertainment, and it's so freaking book without misfiring once, at least to me. It's so powerful and it's so profound, and it stayed with me 20 years over that now, and I haven't read these books ever since. I have not reread them. And I talk about them with Meg. I start remembering, like this cognitive process happens, and I start remembering these scenes like it was a dream, like it was real, like it's a real myth. And I'm like, holy shit, it had this much impact on me. So in answer to Andy, I would say if the High Republic literature holds on its own and it continues to be exciting and invigorating and full of ideas, no amount of lukewarm video games or half-assed TV shows are going to scrap that. At least this is my angle. I think there's no more profound interaction with the story than through a book. A text that you personify, you absorb, you make it yours. When I was reading Star Wars as a kid, as a teenager, in 1998, I didn't have the good English to understand at least 40% of the book. So what I had to do, I had to kind of fill the gaps with my imagination and try to figure out what Talon Karrde, the smuggler, looks like, or what Mara Jade's personality is like, or what this combat scene represents. In a way, I made it my own through my lack of understanding English language. So in a sense, I feel like the High Republic or the Star Wars adult books in the current canon are spearheading that spirit of innovation. They are, to me, the benchmark. So I never get upset, if I get a Mandalorian show, which is like, whatever, or the sequel trilogy, which I was really on board until the Rise of Skywalker. I was like scratching my head. I'm like, you know what? Who cares? The books are so freaking good to me. I'm all right with that. Just keep working on it. Maybe it will take 20 years, like it took for the X-Men series, to have it magnum opus Logan movie come out and blow everybody away.
Yeah,
yeah. It's one of those things. I think with the movies, I think what they're likely to do, and if I was the head of Lucasfilm, if I was Kathleen Kennedy, what I would be doing is, I'd say top priority is a trilogy minimum of Old Republic. It's going to be, PG-13, but really pushing that PG-13 sort of mark, kind of like Andor was in a lot of respects, and have it to do with the Sith Wars, the Jedi and Sith Wars. Legends fans know about it. Let's put our own spin on it. Let's, if we're going to use characters, we want to do something, interesting with them. We want to just not carbon copy stuff, but we want to put our own spin. We want to add things that actually add value and whatnot. And just make a trilogy, make it really good, make it one director who does all three of them, big, like 5, 6, 7, 8 year project, or 10 year. And we say, look, we're going to give you a stupid amount of money, but you make the next trilogy. You put everything into this. You do it Peter Jackson style of Lord of the Rings. You do it James Cameron style with Avatar 2, 3, 4, whatever. You give someone time, resources to work it all out and figure out what they generally want to do, and then let them choose who they want to incorporate in the project to help them tweak things, but they're the through driving force. You do that, and you do that with the Jedi and Sith Wars. You create something with the maturity of Andor, but you can have the odd little character, like a Grogu-esque character. I'm not saying like that, but have a cutesy droid. Everyone loves a droid. They're not too cute, so they won't wind people up. K2SO works perfectly in Rogue One. Have a character like that. B2 Emo, he works great in Andor. Have a droid character and a serious motif going through. Have dark side stuff coming through. Use some of this technology you have to make it so that you can have effects happening to people that are brutal and gory. When Nemec gets crushed by that the money thing in Andor, that crunch that you get,
it was horrific.
That is what you need. You do that with Darth Bane or someone like that, using the Force on someone and then slamming into a wall. You don't need to see them explode with blood everywhere. You know they're dead. You know that's what Andor was doing very well. You've got blasters for killing. You've got lightsabers
skillful
and stuff.
filmmaking.
Exactly. You use that to make it so that you can make something that's accessible, but also is going to make people who are adults, the paying public. You want to appeal to kids because things stay with them. But if you can make it so the adults are accessible, it's accessible for them, people will also grow into it. And that's what I think Andor's doing. That's what Rogue One's doing. And that's what I want them to do with the film if I had ultimate choice. Leave Skywalker alone. And then when those films come out, then you can go, cool. Here's some comic lines that tie in. Here's some books that tie in. Maybe there's a live action series that's, connected in some way, but we've done this thing. We've created this universe, and this guy, or this, it has to be a male, any person who creates this thing, they just put it together. And then if you want to add more content to it, you can do that. That's what I kind of think. But with that big, massive thing, it is getting late. So final thoughts, friends, and then we'll give plugs, and then we will sign off for this, what was a Mandalorian show. And you guys got me ranting and all passionate about stuff. We all did a bit of it because we were all passionate in our own ways, all released a lot of content to do with Star Wars and things. So, Andy, is there any sort of final things you want to say either about the Mines of Mandalore, any sort of subject we haven't yet touched on this? And then, yeah.
I think it was a better episode than the premiere. Visually stunning, visually incredible. Questions still remain, and more were posited for me by what we see in this. A few moments, like we said, completely undone by unnecessary, things happening towards the end. The questions override for me. The concerns about the journey overall do take precedent, unfortunately, as they often do with me. I'm forward thinking, all the time. Like, what's the purpose? What's the reason? What's the meaning? I can see things off in the distance that may come to fruition. Obviously I won't be upset if they don't, but it's what the goal is. Where is the goal? What's the journey? That's what I'm questioning. That's what I'm thinking. Overall, it's a 6 out of 10 episode for me. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing truly mega exciting. The action was okay. The mechanical creature was great. Really loved that. I think that's what sort of pushed me up alongside the visuals from Mandalore, from my previous episode. But yeah, it's still a bit middling for me, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens going forward, I guess.
Nice. Ben, final thoughts on everything we've discussed?
I'll end with a more philosophical, old, wise Ben Kenobi sort of kind of way. Look, nothing is guaranteed in life, and not to blow my own horn, but being in the industry, speaking with the insiders, having formal BA education in animation and film, there's so many moving pieces behind all the politics aside, all of the corporate, we talked about capitalist kind of approach to filmmaking and the business aspect of it. It's just so tough to make a movie that not just pleases or excites fans, but let alone it just feels like a finished product. It's an insanely arduous, task. For me, at the end of the day, I'm just happy there is Star Wars that I know my friends are excited about. I'm looking at this episode, which doesn't work for me. It feels goofy. Yes, I might feel like snotty Shakespeare Benjamin who understands writing and script and cinema, method acting, but at the end of the day, it gives somebody joy. I don't understand people my generation, 40-year-olds, who bicker with one another over Twitter whether sequel trilogy will last another 20 years or fade into the dust. Who cares? There's 6-year-old kids running around with Rey and Kylo like lightsabers doing this thing. What we were doing as kids, man. Who cares? There's always stuff out there. And yes, some of it will become mechanical. I won't hide my personal worry then. When you feed the audience mediocrity is all you're going to get. But as time has proven again and again and again, there will be a time where Star Wars fans won't be satiated anymore. They won't be stand by this mediocrity, and they'll say enough. I'm discontinuing my Disney Plus service. I won't buy this book. And then they're going to kind of shake their asses a little bit. I'm oh my God, we got to step our, game up and introduce a new Star Wars project. And it's going to happen eventually. I mean, we saw it happen with arguably X-Men series is, I would say, the most balanced, stable, progressively good film franchise I've ever seen. But Logan is its crowning achievement. And it took 20 years in the making. And once again, I'm reiterating the point that there's so many moving pieces. Just be patient. Another Andor will come about maybe when I'll be 65, just a little bit older. Who knows?
I do have a little suspicion at Star Wars Celebration. This is not based on rumors or anything I've heard, that they're going to announce a movie thing that's not related to anything we know about. I think the reason that the leaking of the rumors of, Rogue Squadron potentially being shelved and the Kevin Feige film being shelved, I think that was vaguely intentional because they're going to announce something new and big and exciting at Star Wars Celebration that's not just the Taika Waititi film, or it's going to be the Taika Waititi film. Here's the name, the trailer, something like that, some more information, kind of making us think maybe it's not, maybe it's way close to completion that we know. Who knows? But I'm just happy, even with the criticism of this episode, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I get more Star Wars, and as we said, the Bad Batch episode as well this week was brilliant. So I'm more happy with that, and the High Republic books I've been reading, amazing as well. So all the stuff is really, and the comics are great at the moment as well for the most part. So I'm really enjoying all the Star Wars I'm consuming. So then, friends, let's give plugs, and then we'll sign off for this evening. So Andy, where can people find you? I'll put links in the description as always, but your show, your YouTube channel, what you're doing, tell us.
Well, at the moment, I am on the fly all the time. I'm recording videos on my phone due to a change in location. Doing a bit of shoddy DIY work, which is taking far too much time. So you can find me doing my handheld video reviews without any editing or any of my usual tricks of putting clips in or anything like that. Over on Angry Andy Reviews on YouTube. And you can find me mainly at my base of operations at Andy_review on Twitter. I think that's the right one. Probably given the wrong handle, but there you go. But you can find me. So yeah, I'm just going through the motions. Been watching The Last of Us recently. Been doing reviews on that. And I've just started on The Mandalorian as well. Struggling with movies though. I watched Ant-Man Quantumania, need to do a review on it, but didn't enjoy it enough that I really want to spend time talking about it any further.
I really,
to be quite honest. Yeah, well, that's it. There we go. It's up and down.
I'm a very optimistic person though. Like I can only probably name 15 or 20 films I've seen that I think are like I actively didn't enjoy watching and I kind of regret watching. Maybe 20. I'm a pretty optimistic when it comes to it. I'm like, meh, that was all right. I'm fine with that, and then I move on. But I did actually really enjoy Ant-Man. But yes, check out Andy's stuff. It's brilliant. It's fun. You get to see the angry from where his name comes from. Ben, where can people find you? Tell us.
Guys, I'm on YouTube, Star Wars Timeline, primarily doing podcasts. They're kind of okay. They're always better with British accent and with that special fluffy beard you guys are seeing on the screen. And by that, I mean Mike. I need to drag him more into it. I'm also on Facebook, also Star Wars Timeline, where we try to have a healthy, fun debates, discussions without literal. Anybody's welcome to come in, say their piece in a constructive, respectful manner. I'm also on Twitter, SWT_channel, where I do my most explicit. This is my Zen place. This is where I get to unload all of my crap about how I feel, like my misgivings about Star Wars, the most emotional things, and still try to act semi-civil there too. But once again, guys, thanks so much for having me. Andy, I love when we get to cross pathways on Twitter. Interacting with you, your stuff is always awesome. Mike, great talking to you as well. You guys are true gentlemen and scholars of Star Wars.
And you too. Thank you very much, sir. And you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat. If people can see on video, I've got a little signy thing just there. There you go. Fun times. Yes, you can find me, and there's a woodburn one there as well. 2 places. But you're probably watching this. If you're seeing the video, you're on my YouTube channel, so go check out all my other Star Warsy stuff on there, and follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. Recently had a conversation with Kevin Shinnick, who wrote Force Collector. He's also worked personally with George Lucas. That was a really, really cool conversation. We talk about movies, history, George Lucas, Star Wars detours, Star Wars project that never saw the light of day, and lots of other really interesting stuff. He's a great guy, really, really cool guy. And so check that episode out. And if you're listening to this, go check out Star Wars Comics in Canon, because you never have to have picked up a Star Wars comic in your entire life. You can just go over there or listen to episodes on stuff you fancy. If you're on YouTube, you can just check out the playlists there. If you just want to hear everything about Darth Vader, go over there, listen to me talk about the comics. I go through the plot details, so you don't have to. But if you have done, it serves as a refresher, and you get bonus information along the way. But on this episode of Mandalorian, there wasn't really that much bonus stuff to tell. So sorry, friends. Last episode there was. Maybe next episode there will be. We shall see. But Andy, Ben, it's always delightful speaking with both of you. I'm so happy you could come on the show and chat Star Wars with me. And it's always just a pleasure speaking to two people who are passionate about Star Wars, who we have varying opinions, but we can all be respectful and have a really great, long, tangent-filled conversation. It's delightful. So thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.